This is GovExec Daily, where we bring you the federal stories that really matter. It's July 30th, 2021. I'm Ross Fortuné. Whistleblowers are a fundamental part of government transparency in the U.S. and have been around for as long as the United States has existed as a sovereign country. In fact, the first whistleblower protection resolution was passed on July 30th, 1778, by the Continental Congress after 10 whistleblowers reported wrongdoing and abuses committed by a superior officer in the Continental Navy. Each year, National Whistleblower Day is marked on July 30th to commemorate the anniversary of that first whistleblower protection law and to honor whistleblowers. Government whistleblowers do not have it easy. While it is illegal for management to retaliate against a whistleblower, adjudicating such cases takes lots of time and the whistleblowers face outside repercussions. In some cases, the public can turn against whistleblowers, as supporters of former President Donald Trump publicly criticized Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman and former Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch during Trump's impeachment. Whistleblowers are sometimes called traitors and un-American, all because they exposed wrongdoing in the government. Irvin McCullough is a National Security Analyst at the Government Accountability Project. He'll join me next to talk about National Whistleblower Day and the state of whistleblower rights in the United States. Want to hear more from GovExec, NextGov, Defense One, and Route 50? Tune in to our virtual events to hear interviews with government leaders about the most important topics today, including the federal workforce, health IT, artificial intelligence, 5G, and more. Visit govexec.com/events to learn more. Each year, National Whistleblower Day is observed on July 30th to commemorate the first American whistleblower protection law, a resolution passed by the Continental Congress in 1778 after 10 whistleblowers reported wrongdoing committed by a superior officer in the Continental Navy. Since the beginning of the United States, whistleblowers have been an integral part of government oversight and accountability. Irvin McCullough is a senior national security analyst at the Government Accountability Project. He joins me now to discuss National Whistleblower Day and the state of whistleblower rights. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much for having me, Ross. It's great to be here.
So last time we talked, just a few months ago, we were discussing the oversight of the COVID-19 pandemic relief funding and the need for the White House and Congress to enact stronger whistleblower protections for that huge amount of money. Where are we now with that, at this stage in the pandemic?
Well, the COVID-19 Whistleblower Protection Act that was first introduced last year and that we talked about earlier this year in the podcast, it has been reintroduced this Congress. It is still as necessary as it was a year ago, despite the fact that we are recovering a bit from the pandemic. And that's because this bill doesn't just protect contractors who are recipients of federal funds in the COVID package. It protects and reforms the contracting whistleblowing statutes. So all federal contractors, whether or not they're receiving COVID funding in particular, or funding through other major federal stimulus programs, they can use these new rights. They are afforded these new whistleblowing protections. If they see fraud, if they see waste, they can report it, provided this legislation passes, and be protected with significantly improved protections over what is currently on the books. It's absolutely vital that this is passed, that it's enacted into law, because we have trillions of dollars being spent by the federal government, our taxpayer money. A lot of it is going to go down the toilet to waste and fraud. Without proper whistleblowing protections, there is no chance we're able to recover as much money as we would have been able to otherwise. And to ensure the taxpayers are actually getting their money's worth, we need this bill to pass. We need stronger contractor whistleblowing protections so people aren't afraid to report waste and fraud whenever they see it, because a lot of people are seeing it right now and staying silent.
Have you been in contact with people in Congress or those around it to know if it's going to pass or what its odds are?
We're optimistic that we're going to find a home for this legislation, whether it passes as a standalone bill or as a larger package, attached to the National Defense Authorization Act, for example. That was the way these protections were first enacted. Back in 2009, after the Obama era stimulus package, Republican members really demanded best practice whistleblower protections for contractors. And what was passed was a pilot program, ensuring that some contractors had whistleblowing protections to report waste, fraud, and other issues related to the stimulus fundings. In 2015 or 2016, that program was made permanent, and it was made permanent through the National Defense Authorization Act. It was made permanent in part through, that's in part because you have two separate statutes for defense contractors and then for all other federal contractors. And we're hoping that the National Defense Authorization Act this year might be a good home for these specific reforms to ensure that we're not wasting billions, if not trillions of dollars, just money that could be recovered.
Yeah, as you alluded, this is taxpayer money. This is money that we pay into as every year with our withholding and our IRS payments and all those kinds of things. Let's move to the sort of topic of this week to a certain extent. The January 6th Select Committee had some hearings this week, but previously it had hired as a staff director a man with a whistleblower retaliation past, unfortunately. Tell me about David Buckley and what concerns you may have about him.
It's totally unfortunate. This is an extremely unforced error by the committee. David Buckley was the CIA's Inspector General for a few years during the Obama administration. While he was the CIA Inspector General, the DHS Office of Inspector General in 2019 found that while David Buckley was the Inspector General at CIA, he engaged in unlawful whistleblower retaliation. He retaliated against one whistleblower, for example, who is a guy named Andrew McCullough. Now, Andrew McCullough is a phenomenal whistleblower attorney nowadays. Back when he was an attorney with the CIA's Office of Inspector General, he tried cooperating with the intelligence community inspector general in a review or inspection, and he was retaliated against for his cooperation. He tried to make disclosures, and he was retaliated against. They opened up an investigation against him. They took away his security clearance. It was really unfortunate. Just a few years after that happened, however, Andrew went into private practice and established himself as a whistleblower lawyer, using his experience to help whistleblowers. And he became the whistleblower attorney for the Ukraine whistleblower that sparked impeachment back in 2019. And as a really famous whistleblower attorney, he also is representing two police officers alongside as part of Mark Zaid's law firm. Mark Zaid's another phenomenal whistleblower attorney. And he's representing two police officers who testified before the select committee this week. Now, last week, Thursday, was when David Buckley was announced as the staff director for this committee. These whistleblower attorneys, Mark Zaid, Andrew McCullough, and their colleagues, have been representing these witnesses for quite some time now. This was a shock because David Buckley's selection was a shock because the most essential premise for the January 6th committee is the free flow of evidence from witnesses. And the first principles for the free flow of evidence are credibility and trust. Mr. Buckley possesses neither. And without having someone who will be warm to whistleblowers, will be welcoming to whistleblowers, will encourage whistleblowers to step forward, I don't see how whistleblowers can comfortably step forward to this committee. And that's a big shame because this committee's work is so vital to our democracy and our nation. Actually investigating the January 6th incident and finding all the facts, turning over every stone, that's not going to be possible without whistleblower and witness testimony. And once again, that requires trust and credibility that Mr. Buckley just does not have.
That shocked me when I saw his the explanation of what he was doing and where he was. It's as you know and as I said in the intro, the whistleblowers are sort of an integral part of they are an integral part of transparency, and the idea that this particular examination, the hearings, the committee, like the idea that there will be any barriers to transparency is deeply disappointing, especially considering there have been so many political ones. We'll move to a separate sort of more current well, not really current, but another bit of news this week. Daniel Hale was sentenced to 4 years. Now, he kind of speaks to the leaker versus whistleblower conversation. Reality Winner recently left incarceration after 4 years. Edward Snowden is still holed up in Russia. These are high-profile situations, but what do they say about the state of whistleblower protections, particularly in the national security infrastructure?
Well, it says quite clearly that there is no defense against criminal liability from an Espionage Act charge for releasing classified information. Unfortunately, there are two types of whistleblowers. Both deserve our support and protection. But the two types of whistleblowers in the national security arena are whistleblowers of civil disobedience and lawful whistleblowers that follow the whistleblowing systems created for with anti-retaliation protections. With the civil disobedient whistleblowers, it's ironic that it's still a crime in America to be a national security whistleblower when the government wants to keep certain misconduct secret. America is actually one of the last holdouts globally to not provide protections to civil disobedient whistleblowers. The European Union passed a directive lately that does cover all EU member states. If there's a national security whistleblower, they are shielded from criminal retaliation. Civil disobedient whistleblowers, they're on a parallel track to what we've been working on with the congressional intelligence committees and with the United States intelligence community to improve the lawful whistleblowing systems. And these are the systems that everyone heard about back in 2019. And if listeners are in the intelligence community, I hope they hear about on a more regular basis. This is where you can make a protected disclosure of wrongdoing to your inspector general at your agency, the intelligence community inspector general, to the congressional intelligence committees through the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act, which says you got to go through the inspector general first, or throughout your chain of command and to other folks that can actually do something and make a difference with the information that you have as a whistleblower. We're delighted to see that the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence passed out a committee, the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2022. That should have a number of reforms to the intelligence community whistleblowing system. It's ironic that we're recording this the day after the bill was passed out of committee, because I still haven't reviewed the bill text yet. But my understanding is there are a lot of good whistleblowing reforms to the intelligence community system inside that bill. Things like allowing intelligence community whistleblowers to go directly to the congressional intelligence committees, removing a ton of prior restraint that currently chills whistleblowing and creates opportunities for people to squash disclosures before they ever get to the congressional intelligence committees. So we're eager to see a number of different reforms to the lawful whistleblowing system. And we're optimistic that this system will be improved, its credibility will be strengthened, and our trust in it can be better.
That trust is really paramount. We'll end on this. This is an episode of our show that's going to post on National Whistleblower Day, July 30th. Bird's eye view. How do you feel about the state of whistleblower protections in the Biden administration? 6 months, not a long time, but still at 6 months against the previous two administrations.
There's been an impressive change in the atmosphere, but we're still eagerly awaiting, starting to become impatiently awaiting tangible results. It's been 6 months and there are no members on the Merit System Protection Board that protects civil service whistleblowers' rights. We haven't been able to get the ear of the Secretary of Labor about the free-falling corporate whistleblowing rights under the Trump administration that the Trump administration's Department of Labor sent spiraling into a free fall. While there's been this wonderful change of an attitude, we don't perceive the administration as opponents of whistleblowing, but they haven't delivered any results. At this point in the Obama administration, we'd already had a partnership between civil society and the Obama White House's ethics czar. And I haven't seen anything like that here. While they're accepting our meetings requests every once in a while and they're talking to us, I'm really not seeing a lot of action in the executive branch. We are seeing some more action in Congress, thankfully. For example, the Whistleblower Protection Improvement Act was introduced earlier this year and passed out of the House Oversight Committee. It had, in a bipartisan manner, it does have a Republican co-sponsor. We're hoping that it can pass through the Senate and actually give federal workers a lot more whistleblowing protections. We've also seen, for example, Senator Feinstein introduce the Congressional Whistleblower Protection Act today, which would create create enforcement teeth to a long-standing, century-old right that federal employees have to communicate wrongdoing with Congress. It would allow federal employees to challenge retaliation they face for going to Congress with whistleblowing disclosures. And that includes folks in the intelligence community and the FBI. Two entities right now that may have a hard time going to Congress, the intelligence community specifically, not the FBI. So we're really optimistic about certain legislation that's in the hopper, but we would really use some more support from the executive branch to ensure that these necessary and vital protections that strengthen our government and our democracy are able to pass the Congress and be enacted into law. So that way whistleblowers have rights, they have protections, and they can all make sure that our government works better for all of us.
Yeah, ultimately that's where whistleblowers reside, in that place where making government work for us and bring more accountability to the people who are doing the work in our names. Irvin, thanks so much for being on the show with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to GovExec Daily. Our show was produced by Adam Butler and hosted by me, Ross John Fortune. We want to thank the Government Accountability Project's Irvin McCullough for joining the program. Our music is the song Signals by Catfish Dancing. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can email us any feedback at podcast@govexec.com or hit us up on Twitter @govexec. We'd love to hear from you. We'll talk to you later.